We are into the final game of the day. You'll have to excuse me as I've just had a quick snack, but we are in Haven. HypHypHyp defending first against Dreamchasers. And there's a bit of mathematician stuff that we need to work out. This we'll do during the game, but first let's play out the pistol round whilst I just grab myself a quick drink. Right, excuse me for being gone so long. I was literally just checking. So, there is a small chance that Dreamchasers might not qualify. It could be a freeway, not necessarily a freeway tie, but depends, of course, on the results of this game, and of course, assuming that worst players will be able to 2-0 Godsend, it is going to be the following. If, of course, Dreamchasers win this game 2-1, they will qualify. Hip won't. If they win 2-1, it will also qualify with Hip not qualifying, of course. Just any win, I suppose, that Dreamchasers are able to get will confirm them 100% sure. I mean, it would do if they go 3-0. It would mean that Hip have to win this game in order to qualify. The thing about this is that Hip need to 2-0 this. Even if they win this game 2-1, they still will not qualify. So back to the game. 2-0 advantage is on the side of Dreamchasers, but there's only going to be one alive. That we sort of double checked all the stats and know exactly what we're working with. And able to have a bit of a break to get my voice back. It sounds a little less hoarse, to say the least. Will be Hip taking their first round of the game. The score is currently 1-2. Looking at the lineup, I haven't really had the opportunity to look at Hip's team at all, I don't think. Or maybe a couple of times in any case. But of course, we've been following the Dreamchasers around as they've won both their games pretty decisively against Godsend and very narrowly by the skin of their teeth against the worst players. Hip need to win this game and the game following. Doesn't necessarily matter by what points, but they can't lose a map. They lose a map, they will not qualify, which would be super surprising considering how valued this team is in the scene. it's fair to say that their top 5 placing isn't necessarily going to follow, but we need to get there first. Fearoff is going to be walled off. And Law is pushing aggressively through there, but in fact, B-Site is not going to be the one that's hit. Law is going to run into Emilio, I think, in this corner. Gets a nice frag and is going to sort of tick a little bit of a tussle into mid with Fearoff, who is one of the latter 2 people surviving on this side. Has a very early Hunter's Fury and manages to get a couple of tags in, but misses the next few shots. The surviving members of the Dream Chasers managed to dive and dodge their way out of it. Zadish is going to be playing in Phoenix again. Done quite a lot on this role, but is now pinned into a corner a little bit. But Korea manages to get the help, but they're just dancing between each other, but weren't expecting Zad to be able to push. Now, the only surviving member of HypHyp's team is going to be Fearoff. Both teams pretty much buying all of the guns that they could want, and this is going to be a pretty decisive save. Did make Dream Chasers bleed a little bit, but ultimately not enough to really worry them. They're going to go 3-1 up. It's the first time I've ever solo casted, but I even think solo casting 3 best of 3s on a hot, near enough summer's day is pretty much a new challenge. Not hating it, certainly not by any stretch. I love casting, but it's tough. We've been streaming for near on 7 hours. Been casting near enough the majority of that. Still have a couple more to go. But so far, I think it's been a really exciting day so far. Group A's turned out all the surprises. I think the perceived thing, I suppose, is that some of these tournaments can be a bit of a blowout. So far, Group A has been surprising, to say the least. There's Law, a few more tricks up his sleeve. Can even dedicate the res, giving a numbers advantage to them. Petty Skell is gonna extend on that a little bit, as the tagged member of Emilio is actually running onto the site. Still has his ultimate. The plant's gonna come in. The wall is gonna come through from the teammate. It's gonna be safe. Pretty much musical chairs on what they're playing, but Emilio gets a nice pick onto HypHyp. Doesn't know where the latter members are. Maybe thinking that it could be there. The cyber cage is giving that indication too, but all the knives are missed, and now it's going to be all the way down to it. And Law does a lot, and Emilio, tactical crouching on the top of Law. Nicely played by the attack. They were 4-2 down, but Safe and Emilio managed to do so much, and I think we're still very much on that narrative that Emilio, 5 rounds in, 8-3, is very much the key member of this lineup. Didn't necessarily have too much to say in the worst players game, but if they can extend that lead, they'd be high and dry. And I think a win over these guys of HypHypHyp, pick up the Law is exceptional through the doorway. If I can get a pick onto HypHyp here, not only do they cement themselves in the qualifiers as the top seed, but also cause a big upset and put their name on the board. HypHyp have had a pretty disastrous day. If they're not careful, things can only get worse. Them not qualifying for this tournament would be an absolute huge loss for them. Not set in stone just yet. So if he's got a wall off this right hand side where there isn't actually anybody, Petit Skell is going to be holding on this left hand side. Picks up the Phantom from one of his dead opponents. Spots the cloth that is unsafe. Position where the Jet is holding is keeping him at bay, but King Cobra, nice bait and switch, I suppose it would be. He was taking a lot of damage and was almost caught out like his teammate, so he's got to back off, but this aggressive push from the attack is caught out on C. As a couple of people go down, Law actually sprays down multiple. And has control over the spike. There's only going to be Emilio left. It's going to be a keen eye, but gets a nice shot into Law. With the Phantoms, that would have to be a couple of, maybe even a couple of headshots to bring that one up, but wasn't expecting Petty Skull to be holding on top of the platform. I know there's a few people wanting to see the Godsend game. I fully understand that. Something I will definitely consider for future weeks. Obviously, I don't have a say in that, but, you know, I think the tournament organisers are listening, but what I can try and do is keep you up to date with the scores as they're happening. But if you prefer the French and English stream to be looking at multiple games, even if you don't speak French, just to know, you know, keep it on another monitor, see what the score is. Let your feedback known. And I'm sure for future weeks we'll be sure to try and make sure that that happens, but personally, I was very excited to see the HIP team play. We haven't seen them all day. And I don't want to make assumptions, but worst players have looked a solid squad and seem to have waned a little bit, but I think if we're looking at the key games in who qualifies and what might make to be an interesting matchup, I think this wins out, if, from my personal opinion, but of course you can disagree with me there. I know there are a lot of Godsend fans and fans of the players, which, you know, is fair enough, but from an objective, a bigger picture sort of mindset. Oh, we are seeing a bit of the fall of HIP's team. Not just in this game necessarily, I don't want to draw conclusions just yet, but I think their loss against worst players, then worst players losing against Dreamchasers sort of lines up. And immediately King Cobra, the showstopper, isn't showstopping anything. We see a nice clean connection from HIP, shutting that one down, and I think HIP heard me. Definitely considered one of the top teams. I think Jerome from Prodigy, the CEO, rated them as the top 3, which I would disagree with, but only slightly. Top 5, maybe? It depends after this weekend. If they don't qualify for this, I think they're going to fall down the leaderboard a little bit, if I'm being brutally honest. Dreamchasers might completely take their place. They haven't looked perfect. They haven't even looked really, really good for a team that would 3-0 this if they beat HIP in this game, but wouldn't matter. They script on through against some difficult teams. In other groups it might be a lot easier, in other groups it might be impossible. Dreamchasers are just showing that they can fight with the big boys. And it's fair to say the HIP's team haven't had a good week since last weekend. Maybe wanted to end the closed beta on a little bit of a high note. It's worth adding, yeah, that in regards to standings, I don't think it's possible for Godsend to qualify. And I think worst players will definitely qualify regardless. That's something I'll have to double check. I have my laptop and all of my Discord and stuff's on there, hence why I like disappear, but Back to this game, Kree is actually going to teleport across. Kind of smart considering he gave away the position. See, that is perfect because Zaj thinks that he's there, teleports across, and nice little switcheroo. The Hunter's Fury is going to be used on the side of the defense. Fear off, which is a perfect name for Silver. Gets a nice kill onto Safe, and now we're starting to see Hip's team start to build up a bit. Faster tempo game. Like it was a slow burner between Worst Players and Dream Chasers. This has a bit more of a punch to it. A bit spicier. There's still a lot to be done for either team as they're pretty much neck and neck in rounds. Whilst we're waiting in this this fairly boring pre-round where Emilio and the rest of Dream Chasers can't necessarily afford, I'm going to quickly check in what universe that both these teams go and qualify that Worst Players don't. So bear with me as we watch Fear Off scout out a lot of key info. Speaking of which, Aditi Baron, I saw your question. The game is happening at the same time, yes. So you won't see Godsend on the stream anymore today. Well, like I said, if you guys would prefer to have it on another stream, in Russian, in German, in French, then do let us know. Of course, there's not many casting slots in a game. The spectating is a bit, lackluster in that capacity, but in any case, I feel like I'm taking away from a really solid defense as Hip gets free. He's holding nice and aggressive, but knows that there is only one left, and that's going to be Safe, who isn't safe there. All of the damage coming through, and now the equal on score. Kind of understandable that that would happen. Not too many casualties on this defense, as the score is even, and now both these teams can buy some pretty big guns. Set themselves on a pretty hefty advantage, hopefully, when we see these teams switch sides and see Hip start to attack. Hip is a great person to spectate as he gets free, can't get safe, but that's alright. Petty Skull is going to shut that one down. Tempo of that was slow, but then again, bit of spice, a bit of punch. So, as far as standings go, assuming that Worst Players beats Godsend, Worst Players will be going through to qualify. Not necessarily sure what seed, let's not get into that, but of course if Hip loses this game, they are out. Even if they win this game 2-1, as in win 2 maps and lose 1, they will still not qualify. They have to win this decisively in order to go through to the qualifiers. Whilst they are ahead currently, I don't imagine the Dream Chasers are going to go down that easily, as it's their neck on the line too. And my name is Ryan, and not Mr. Caster.
I know exactly where you are.
The attackers use Neural Theft. The kicker's just kicking about. Law just punishes that fairly easily. The running back is going to be used, and they know where the last defender is going to be. Petty Skull is going to repeat the same angle that he died on. But that's not even where it necessarily is, because the spike has been switcherooed onto the A site. It's picked up by the dart. Emilio is in that corner, but they aren't necessarily sure where Zandish is on the Phoenix. Good tap for the defuse, but I think Emilio is fairly confident that it's an engagement that they can take. Hiding in the own cage. It's going to peek out, but Emilio was able to get the kill. Petit Scale was fairly low on health. Am I saying that right? Is there any French people in chat? What does Petit Scale even mean? Petit means small, I know. But I wonder what the scale part is. As we now start to switch over sides, so let me just swap around the scores because the spectate bug is in. And we can have a good look at the stats, pretty much neck and neck in kills too, to an extent. Although it does seem that overall, Hyp's team are able to get more for their money. To be able to check all of the stats and all of the info from the spike.gg now covers events such as this one. So you can see all of the stats of the games, even the games that aren't necessarily being casted. Be able to see who top fragged for Godsend. Who played well, who didn't. Great way to keep it up to date with some of the top fraggers. Might even try and find out if there is one today. I would assume it would be Emilio. But he is down and out for this one on defense as the whole team of HypHypHyp is still alive. Hip hip hooray, more like. But Safe is scouting out mid. There is going to be a breach there. Knows that they're there, I feel. Like they tagged something. Hip is going to catch the rotating rays. King Cobra's going to wrap around towards heaven. Hip actually gets the kill onto the rotating Safe, so now it's only King Cobra to try and do as much as possible. King Cobra gets 2. Only has 3 more to get. You know, the whole squad with an ace and very little time on the clock. It's going to try and spray. The blast pack might do a bit of damage. Not enough that it's lethal. As it now spreads out to back out. That's another great headshot to Fearoff. Last 2 people are on connector. Korea is going to make sure that that stops before it gets a bit too out of hand. King Cobra coming in as a bit of a standing for the Dream Chasers. It's been doing quite a lot, but not enough that it's leading them to a glorious victory just yet. All that we need to see from Dream Chasers to confirm their position in this qualifiers is to take a map. Any map. This map, the map afterwards. They can't lose 2-0. They can't do that. They lose 2-0, they're out. It's going to be Hip worst players. And that would be daylight robbery as far as I'm concerned. You can tell I've picked up a bit more after I've eaten and had a bit of a drink. I say drink, it's like a Diet Coke. I don't make it sound like it's Alka-Pops. As you sort of read in chat, of course this is a delay between me reading it and you seeing me read it out, but tomorrow all of the games will be broadcasted. Granted, they might be in French, but you can watch the main cast, which is going to be me for the first 2. And then passing over to the other Ryan in our casting pair. That's going to be Laz, who should have done this game, but had a bit of an emergency, a good one. His sister went into labour, so congratulations to her. Bit of a crazy old time to get into all that, but glad it's good news. But I'm super excited to see so many people wanting as much European tournament as possible. And regardless of whether I would be casting this or not, I would very much be keeping a keen eye on it. So much European tournaments going on at the moment. And launch in only less than 2 weeks. How about that? And everybody will be playing. All of the people that are watching now will be considered trash within a couple of weeks after that. HypHypHyp are now 8-6 up, winning the pistol round and the follow-up. The plan is looking to come in as they go up against the 3 versus 2. Emilio going on a long wraparound, but he needs to be careful of the Cypher. Petit Scale is around Cubby. Double doors is going to be dropped out of a King Cobra. Wants to wrap around. They want to do it together. They need to check at every single angle, but the camera is going to give up where King Cobra is. Emilio might be able to take advantage of that to an extent, but that Rickobot's going to give that up too. So the spray is going to come in and Emilio can only fight so much. There is life yet for HypHypHyp. Even just winning Haven isn't enough. They need to do this as a blowout. 2-0. They need that.
Here.
This is the first map, yeah.
Here.
DREAMCHASERS are 2-0, sorry. They beat Godsend and then they beat worse players. HypHyp are 1-1. Beat Godsend. I think everybody's beaten Godsend at this point. But they lost against worse players. So if Hyp take this win against the DREAMCHASERS, it's a bit of a snake eating itself kind of thing going on. But because of how teams that would be 2-1 would be decided, shot story basically is Law and the rest of HypHypHyp need to win this map and the next one 2-0 in order to qualify in place of DREAMCHASERS, the team that they're playing. If they don't, DREAMCHASERS will be going through and we'll be sending HypHypHyp home, home, home. Zadish with the frenzy is able to get a couple of kills, but now the last remaining members, Frey and Fearoff, are able to plant on the site, but Emilio had their position and given up by tripwire. It's going to rotate around. It's still awkward when it comes to guns. I'm pretty sure everybody on this defended side is holding on to a weapon that they didn't start the round with, to say the least. Two frenzies in play, but King Cobra is able to get Kriya. It's only Fearoff left, who is in sewer, so that is going to be a wall that puts it up. Diffuse is going to come in nice and easy. And Fearoff is just going to save whatever gun that they could get. Important round to win if you are on the side of DREAMCHASERS. First round that they won on this defense. Shad is keeping us up to date. We're already in our second map for Godsend. They lost 13-2. They're currently 4-0 down. I think this is a baptism of fire for the Godsend team. Not to harbour on too much about a team that we're not necessarily watching, but they are in a really tough group. I would consider Group D the group of death, when you have TG4L in there, Prodigy, Fabricant. Scary, scary teams. Royals too. All of them have won tournaments recently. Or at least finished high up. This is the one that's actually kind of surprising a lot of people. You'd just assume that HypHypHyp's team would qualify no problem. Would be everyone, it'd be all easy. But here they are. That's literally the doorway for them qualifying. Not impossible to get through, but tough. And Laura's breaking their way on in. Fancy and the Vandal. Interesting discussion there, but he is going to take a lot of space towards C-Long. And Zadish is pushing from that way. But it might be a bit of an awkward overextend. Zadish going to peek at a similar time. Looks away. Terrible timing. Laura is able to get his third in that round, but can't get safe. Both of them are backing up. Just got to save. Willing to give this one up again. As we see HypHypHyp go 10 for 7. I don't necessarily think that if HypHyp lose this map that they'd forfeit the next. I think they'd probably still just play it out. I don't know what the rules are necessarily if they would want to forfeit that, but I mean, I'd understand why, but certainly a question to bring to the tournament organisers if you are listening. But that's assuming if HypHypHyp lose this round or the next one. Two operators on this defense. Amelia knows that the teleport came in from Kree, who is playing on the Omen. Just to try and catch them out, but does so with Hyp that wasn't expecting him to be there, and Law is just nailing these shots, having a terrific game on the Sage. And Kree has hopped down from heaven. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are safe, but Resurrect is coming on through to bring back Fear off, and the Neural Theft has revealed exactly where the latter three agents are. The Resurrect even coming on the defending side. Still a lot more to do. Emilio is brought back to life and is dedicating a big ultimate. Bladestorm is going to glide on through. Isn't quite sure where people are, but gets Petty Skell. All of the ultimates being used. Hunter's Fury is used from distance. He is the last one alive. Catches Emilio, but I'd imagine a defuse is going to come in quite quickly, considering the wall is there. He has to try and break it and stop it from happening, but doesn't matter too much. King Cobra can get the kill, whilst Safe can defuse safely. I was thinking it wasn't necessary to dedicate the Resurrect on the attack, but ended up not even helping him out that much. That's a big round to win. Well, certainly if you are on the defending side of Dream Chasers. They dedicated the Resurrect. They dedicated the Bladestorm pretty much straight away. But look at all those ultimates. Obviously, the round started from the Shadows. But this Fury, the Resurrect, Neural Theft. A lot of ultimates used on that attack and still lost the round. Might be a big hit to Hyp's game plan. Might not even see those ultimates again. But these 5 rounds are going to be really awkward still for Dream Chasers that want to try and grab this one. Freya starts off by getting a kill onto Kicker, and the C site is pretty much taken up completely. Smoke towards the back of C is there. And Kriya has a nice aggressive angle hold. Law gets a nice spray. He's just absolutely loving life. He's pushing through, but Emilio's just going to punish that overzealousness. Spike is planted, but that's still not enough to scare away Zadish, who's dedicating and run it back. Runs into Fear's operator. And Rico Bolt is going to show up a little bit more as Kriya gets another nice kill on to Safe. He's very low health, so needs to be a bit more careful, but big ask now from Emilio and Zadish, who most likely going to give this one up. It can get a nice punish onto Hyp there, but I don't think economy-wise that's going to ruffle up too many feathers. Only 2 more rounds to get on the side of HypHypHyp. Law is currently the front runner when it comes to frags.
Here.
Still more to do. Emilio again showing typically how Jet is played on this attack. Defense, sorry. But very aggressively, to say the least. Recon Ball's going to come through and show up absolutely nothing, but Fearov still gets a kill regardless. Catching a sewer push at a Zadish. That will be Zadish, sorry. Actually, it would be, yeah. The triple duelist aggressive lineup from Dream Chasers is still struggling against a well-fortified hip lineup. Neurotheft is going to show up exactly where the last remaining members of this attack are going to be, and there's going to be a nice wrap around Emilio. It's going to come all the way from... It's on mid, but might see a very seal-on push come through, but before that kick is able to get free, there's only one left, but doesn't spot Petty Skell, who's the last one alive. Has to watch, and is watching tunnel where there isn't anybody at all. Nice pincer movement, but it is Emilio that gets the kill. A hopping, interesting technique of the teabagging, but to work out nicely. And you can see how pleased Dream Chasers are with that. Very well played on the defense. Even though there was an advantage made by Hip very early on, it still didn't prove a lot much useful. The neural theft was super handy though.
Here. Here.
You're on this defense. Kicker came out clutch in the nick of time. Even getting a couple of kills to his own name. It seems that this defense is going to again play aggressively towards this A site, so they need to be careful. Going to use the cyber cage in order to get them through, but just look how close they're getting. They're just going to push them through. Yeah, Kree's got to punish that super hard. The flash just cut them out completely. There's a lot of emergency buttons that you can press when you're Jet, but not that one. And Zadish gets clean headshot with Kree's Vandal. Suddenly there's not a lot of members left for Dream Chasers as Safe is going to rotate around to connect, and King Cobra's trying to clear angles from up high. Kree's right below him. Needs to spot the Sage, which is on site, but the Showstopper's not going to scare him away completely. Finds exactly where Kree is, who can't get the kill confirmed, but Law can. And King Cobra and Safe, and that puts him on match point. So far, so good if you're Hip. There's a few more hoops to still jump through. And they can't slip. Meanwhile, if you're Dream Chasers and you lose this 2-0, you're going to be kicking yourself, really. If Hip can win this, then each of the teams of worst players, Dream Chasers, and of course our HypHypHyp boys, would have 2 wins and 1 loss. All 3 of them. Very competitive, and unfortunately we have to get into the mathematical parameters to decide who should go, who should stay. And Hip making still a strong case that they are worthy of being in this tournament. Lost out to worst players earlier on today, but so far giving Dream Chasers a really good scare, and they've had a really long day too. Emilio is trying to go again for a mad flank, but doesn't realise that he's the one necessarily being hunted. Petty Skell puts this into a 1 versus 1. They don't have control over the spike. The camera's going to be planted to sort of show up exactly where people are. So this is an awkward 1v1.
My eyes are down.
On the defenders side, they know exactly where they are. It's just a case of who sees who first and from what angle. The kicker showing how angles work in games like this. No doubt from where Petty Skell was looking, there was no way for them to specifically spot it. But a messy round to say the least from both sides. A little bit of geometry that came in. Be the MVP of Dream Chasers there. Interesting match. We've had a fairly long day. I feel like I've been streaming for years. Might be going on to 9 hours by the point that this day is done, but what a day to be casting all this Valorant.
Camera taken out.
Kicker wants to aggressively push them to where they spotted Hip, but very little they could do. Kree's managed to make so much space and does spot exactly where Kicker is, but they aren't aware that Emilio is perched on this little bit of high ground. Can rotate from side to side, but their position now being given up. And that's going to be a strong Hunter's Fury that does capture twice. Has all of the mobility in the world, but there's only so much you can do. Kree has already taken up so much of that space. Things are looking really good if you're Hip. So you only need to get this round in there done and dusted for Haven. And we'll go on to Bind after this, I'm pretty sure. Kree dedicating the teleport, actually. Isn't dedicated really anywhere. He's just trying to bait for his team, and Petty Skell is able to sort of clean up the rest of it. Resurrect forced by Safe, who gets a kill onto Petty Skell. That's going to be enough. HypHypHyp win the first round. And their dreams of still being in this tournament, going to the qualifiers, very much still alive. You can get a quick look at the stats to see how well people did that you can definitely track on Spike.gg. The Spike.gg, sorry. Then we'll be heading into Bind very shortly. Law is the top fragger with a considerable combat score. Kicker and Zadish failed to do too much, but whilst we wait for what map we're going to go into next, we're going to take a very quick break. As I mentioned, HypHypHyp go 1-0 up. They're looking pretty good. It will be like a 2-minute break. So literally don't go anywhere. Go to the toilet, grab a drink, whatever. As this is going to be coming on back online very, very shortly.